All right. Well, it is a little after 4, so we are in wait and see mode, and at the mercy of Dane Logan. As we await some others joining us, just wanted to kill some time and note that if you have not seen our the individual, Jim McDonnell, appointed to be our new chief of police, is up for a full vote at the Los Angeles City Council Friday morning. There will be a ton of people turning out from spaces including Black Lives Matter, as well as immigrant rights coalitions. It's a particularly important issue given Jim McDonald's cooperation with the Trump administration when he was previously in office when it came to deportations. And yeah, there will be a lot more to be said on that. Um, with that, just wanted to take a look at our agenda. We are here to talk about election results, and that will, again, we don't really know when those will come in, but it's supposed to be sometime between 4 and 5. Um, we will also, not sure when we'll get to it, but we will talk about Council Member Kevin De Leon and the number of ethics complaints and violations he's racked up uh, and not too long of a amount of time. But first, just to kind of go through a few things, um, there are some election links that I wanted to run through. We have, sorry, I just got a ton of windows open right now. LAvote.gov, that is where you can find our LA County election results. There is a schedule you can see on the right side of the screen. The registrar last time around kind of took some days off just to give themselves a chance to catch up, but it looks like they're going nonstop with the exclusion of weekends. There's also the county or the California Secretary of State's website, which if you're looking at anything involving a race that is not limited to LA County, whether that be the specific measure or it's a district that stretches between LA and Ventura or LA and San Bernardino, you got to look at the California Secretary of State's website. Otherwise, you're getting a limited picture from the county end. Um, PDI has a really excellent ballot tracker, which gives you an ability to look at things a whole lot closer um, and look at individual districts, see what kind of returns, what kind of outstanding ballots are out there. Very, very helpful if you're really interested in a particular race. You want to check that out. And USC has a voter turnout tool. This is something that's really helpful if you're just trying to check out what turnout is looking like based on region. And as you can see on the screen here in you know, LA County, you get a very unique picture there when it comes to geography and demographics. The darker areas have higher turnout, whereas lower turnout are lighter. Really does align with common indicators as far as wealth, race, all that. It's taking a minute to load, so I don't know how quickly that'll come through, but there we go. And some of these areas are just later votes to come in, and they will catch up, but other areas are just going to be lower in turnout. And just to run through some notes on these results, already went over the Secretary of State's website versus LA County, but this is California. It's going to take weeks to potentially know final results in some races. It's going to take, I think 10 days. It's either 7 or 10 days that voters have to get their ballots in. They have to have postmarked them, but there can be some significant lag in all of them ending up at the registrar's office for tabulation. So we won't even know the full universe of voters for some time. This is going to be a little unique. In 2020 and 2022, we kind of had a very predictable uh, returns. The difference now is in 2024, the Republicans moved from dissuading their voters from participating in early vote, from participating in vote by mail, to encouraging it. So this will be a little bit different than the cycles we've seen in 2020 and 2022. Regardless, what's left to count, we'll have more information on this when the registrar actually lets us know what's in the latest counts. I believe everything that was you know, done via early vote and in-person vote has been counted, and vote by mail that was submitted and received before election day. So we might just be looking at a whole lot of vote by mail ballots, as well as a small number of provisional ballots. So it's going to be definitely a leftward shift in what we see to come. Who knows how significantly that will pan out in what we see today. We've seen in past cycles where it takes a few rounds of updates to really see things break through. But that is LA, that is California. And we can see races depending on the dynamics where they close, and a 10% gap is really not that daunting. But it can be very much matchup dependent, issue dependent, the extent to which you see that strong break. Just nationally, we are in a we are back where we were 4 years ago. And 4 years ago, our city was in a very, very tough financial place. And with Joe Biden being elected, you know, the whole American Rescue Plan and all of the money that was thrown down, that helped cities like LA get through that tough stretch. We're not in that moment anymore. This is not an environment where they can bank on the federal government giving them money. We could see specific issues like our city's pursuit of a sanctuary ordinance be used as a um, something that they fight over, and try to withhold funding from our city unless we abandon that. There could be all kinds of games that are played, and this is particularly, difficult, um, just generally speaking, and it's going to have impacts across the board. There are tons of projects at a county level, at a metro level, where we've gotten money from the federal government to help expedite programs, and that relief is not necessarily going to be there. And we are approaching the World Cup. We are approaching the Olympics, which is going to create all kinds of weird dynamics. Um, and our city is entertaining things like potentially expanding the convention center, which is going to cost significant money. And who knows if the budget resources are there. Lastly, and the most interesting wrinkle, yesterday was a great day for Mark Ridley Thomas. And that might sound a little weird, but if you've kind of kept an eye on social media at all, you might have seen that his son, Sebastian Ridley Thomas, has this was somebody who used to be a Democratic state legislator, is now full MAGA, and has been cheerleading the Trump administration. And the best guess about that is that maybe they are jockeying for a potential pardon. And instead of, the whole family shamelessly going that way, Sebastian can kind of do his thing, and they can keep some options open. Uh, the scariest thing is that pardon might not even be necessary. And there might be a desire to let things play out with Mark Ridley Thomas. He is currently appealing his case, and this could potentially make a really excellent test case for our conservative court to pick up, as they have a Democratic politician um, who is in a particular corruption scandal that they could use to recraft our law on bribery issues. And they could have a African American beloved Democrat as the you know featured sympathetic defendant. Um, so that could potentially be something that we see work its way up to the Supreme Court and gut everything we got there. And it's hard to overstate how much the Supreme Court angle looms large. We have only begun to appreciate the shift in the court recently, and even things like our matching funds program in Los Angeles for public financing of elections. Um, that's something that I genuinely worry about moving forward, and whether or not that lives to see another day. Um, with that, I wanted to just open it up and see if anybody has any thoughts on the election as we kind of kill time and wait, see what's going. Jamie, Chris, anything to add? Please feel free to throw anything in the chat and flag along the way. If there's nothing else, I think we can.
So one thing I did want to flag that I think is interesting is Kevin De Leon still seemingly still has money in his lieutenant governor account. And I think it might be interesting to talk about what he could do and how he could leverage that money. By my calculations, it might be about 2 million that's left in that account.
Yeah. I mean, it's always there to just dole out cash along the way and keep friends around. I don't know if he's really viable for anything, but who knows? Maybe he and Gil try to take over the Alhambra City Council. Um, Apologies. I'm not usually the one that does the sharing screen.
Marina asks if county board expansion has failed.
It has not. It started out in positive territory and it dipped a little bit. I believe currently, as of this morning, it is up ever so slightly. Um, so we wait.
Rob, do you have any speculation as to why some progressive groups um, opposed Measure G?
Um, I think it's different reasons for different folks. And there's some people who were really not happy with the lack of like thought and deliberation, at least at a public level, that went into choosing the number 9. That is something that uh Supervisor Mitchell in particular was hung up on. Wanted to see consideration of potentially something larger. So that was one concern that some folks had. There was the probably the issue that got the most controversy was the move to create an elected county executive. There was an attempt from the opposing supervisors to strip the county executive. Who knows if Barger would have supported it? But Supervisor Mitchell at least made it seem like she would be able to support the thing if that were stripped out. Again, there were concerns expressed about lack of thought put into it. I think that's a little bit more straightforward as far as adopting a commonly used system of checks and balances where there is some sort of executive, like we have at the local level with the city of Los Angeles. I think there is a strong comfort level with the status quo in which people at a local level have been able to enjoy a certain kind of influence. They have the predictability of like who to tend to, what mouths they got to feed, and it's a lot easier for, in some ways, it's a lot easier to influence and control 5 people than it is 9. And if you add to that dynamic, like that's a big, significant enough change on its own. But if you also have this county executive who can potentially be a player in the process when it comes to budget or legislative issues, potentially contract negotiations, that's just another player you've got to deal with. Compounding that is the concern that maybe this individual will be less progressive, and that could change. There's been a lot of effort over the last few years to get more progressives on the county board of supervisors, and big races where there were choices like, do we go with Herb Wesson or we go with somebody who's to his left like Holly Mitchell? Do we go with Bob Hertzberg or do we go with somebody to his left like Lindsay Horvath? And a lot of people have mentioned Rick Caruso as somebody like, oh, they could win, like potentially. But at the same time, like Rick Caruso was running in a lower turnout election in 2022. And this seat will be filled in presidential election cycles. So it's going to be a very, very high turnout progressive electorate. So I don't think it's going to be a huge dramatic change. The board still has the ability to override measures. So it's not as though there's going to be somebody that comes in there as county executive and has a really disruptive influence, but we will see. I'm assuming, yeah. So as we wait for Dean Logan, we can just stroll through here. And again, if there are any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can also unmute yourself. Just starting up at the county level, we have County Measure A. This was the increase to our sales tax to help pay for homeless services, affordable housing. This is doing extremely well, all things considered. Up over 10% right now, and I would expect this to grow. So I think Measure A advocates can feel happy with where it is right now. Measure G, as mentioned, this is a razor thin lead right now, and we really don't know how today's gonna pan out. It could take a little bit of a dip, but I personally feel really great where this is right now. I'm hoping to see it pass, and I think that this could easily end up with a decent margin. I don't think it's going to be overwhelming, but we could easily see this get up to almost double digits. I don't know. We will see, but I think it's got some room to grow here for sure. And just a reminder, Adam Schiff, these results here are not statewide, they're just LA County. One of the really, really big races for Democrats that they've targeted is in Congressional District 27. This is in Northern California or Northern LA County. Goes all the way out to like Palmdale, Lancaster, I believe. It goes down to Santa Clarita and it gets some of Porter Ranch. It's a really big old district that's got a lot of cops in it. Traditionally Republican turf, but Democrats have a voter registration edge there. This is the one that Katie Hill picked up ever so briefly in 2018. I grew up here, so it was something that I wanted to see for forever. And she resigned in scandal within a year or so. And Mike Garcia has not let go of it since he got it. He is up at the moment. However, the early vote was really strong. And by that, I mean, vote by mail. Went really strong for George Whitesides. And I think he's in a fantastic position to take this thing just because it's really not going to get a whole lot better for Mike Garcia. Catherine, how's it going?
Just to chime in on that race, I was told that George Whitesides invested zero money in paid field, which I think could be a big reason if he does not win that election. I'm just saying, I think that was an extremely poor decision to flip a seat.
I don't know anything about the particulars of that race as far as what was going on the ground there. That was one where Christy Smith did not have the ability to go hard on the ground in 2020 because of COVID, and then 2022 went even worse for her. I don't know about Whitesides. I have a hard time believing that nobody was doing field out there.
No, they were relying 100% on volunteers. Like, I know this for a fact. That was a very bad, he had the funding. He should have paid fucking field. I'm just saying.
Like he didn't do paid canvas, or he didn't have field organizers, or what do you mean?
Yeah, he had no paid canvassing whatsoever. He was relying 100% on volunteers to knock doors and phone bank.
Yeah, again, I don't know a ton about the particulars of the race, just that there was a shit ton of money spent, and in particular by some outside groups. And there are some times where, like let's say Labor steps in and says, we're going to do the field in this race, basically. And candidates will strategically, defer from engaging in a certain area. In the past, Kevin De Leon really did that quite often when it comes to like his state Senate run when he was running for U.S. Senate. He basically outsourced his field campaign to Labor. One race that is also, got some attention, and this is where I am right now in District 34. This is a super progressive district. It is the district that Bernie Sanders won in 2020 in the primary by the largest margin of any district in the state of California. It covers a lot of LA City Council districts, 13 and districts 1 and 14, just a super, super progressive area. David Kim is in his third run against Jimmy Gomez, and These races have all always kind of started out with Jimmy Gomez having a decent lead and that quickly closing and slowly dwindling, and he ekes it out by a small margin. So we probably should see this tighten up, although I would say that it looks like Jimmy is a bit ahead of where he was last cycle. And the really big difference between this cycle and previous ones is there is a significantly larger amount of outside spending that has gone against David Kim in an attempt to protect Jimmy Gomez. Jimmy Gomez has also spent the last 4 years trying to ingratiate himself to the squad and look as progressive as possible. David is in a, still in a potentially viable place, but it could be tough to overcome all of that outside spending. Any races people want to jump to? Otherwise, we can take a peek at city council. We'll hop over to the city, or we can start on depressing news, depending on how you view things. Sad to see George Gascon getting spanked. I would expect him to tighten this up, but he's in for a big fat L. Some of the public defenders running for office on judge are looking in a really solid position right now. I know you've been paying closer attention to this, Chris. Any thoughts on the judge races so far?
Um, Not in particular. It is worth noting that Lachey Henderson, who is the only one of those public defenders who is trailing, left the Defenders of Justice slate after the primary. But there may be some other factors involved with that as well.
So just trying to find City of Los Angeles. We of course have a ton of charter measures up on the ballot. The city council redistricting item is at 72.8% right now. I would expect that to grow, get up to at least 75%, could easily get close to 80. Very, very popular stuff. Something I found really fascinating was, independent redistricting has become normalized. And when this is on the ballot, people support it. The one exception you can find is in the state of Ohio, where they had a really huge effort to gather signatures to put independent redistricting on the ballot. And the state legislature did everything they could to undermine it. And that included messing with the ballot language to basically describe the independent redistricting measure as gerrymandering. So voters were faced with like the most confusing ballot question ever, where they're told that like it's going to do independent redistricting and it's also gerrymandering. So the only way you can make independent redistricting unpopular is to be misleading about it. But I thought it was fascinating to see that the ethics reforms are doing extremely well, and in fact, ever so slightly better than redistricting reform. These were, of course, gutted by the dynamic duo of Ulises Hernandez and Hugo Soto Martinez, but still really, really significant changes. And some of those include tripling the potential fines that our elected officials or anybody in front of the Ethics Commission could face, and tying that to inflation. And got to give a shout out to Jamie York for specifically highlighting how the previous proposal did not account for inflation, and you know, that just goes to show that public comment does matter and can end up resulting in small tweaks that make a really big difference and end up in the freaking charter. So that is definitely encouraging to see. Measure FF, this is one that will allow certain individuals in law enforcement from parks, harbor, airport to transfer their pension programs to the LAPD, LAFD ones. Costs a bunch of money. In the end, some of that, you know, it kind of pays for itself, but it's still going to cost our city 23 million in the first year. And $1 million a year after that. So this will have a budget impact. It's at a pretty comfortable place right now. Who knows if that ends up taking a significant change, but it would really take something dramatic to get that anywhere close to losing. I thought it was fascinating to see, for some reason, Measure HH was viewed by people as a yes, and there was more reservation about Measure II. I kind of viewed it opposite, where II seemed very non-controversial, but for whatever reason, HH is doing the best out of all of them. The LA Unified School District independent redistricting measure is sitting pretty at 74.3%. Basically the same as the city of Los Angeles, but a slightly better result so far. And just something to highlight is that for LA Unified School District, that includes 750,000 people that are not in the city of Los Angeles. So that is a much larger base of people potentially weighing in on the thing. And I see, Jamie, your hand is up. I also see that we do have an update to election results. So,
That's what I was gonna flag.
cool. Well, let's go to the race everybody wants to see. I don't know if everybody, but we've got Isabel Jurado and Kevin De Leon. This is pretty close to where it was this morning. No?
Going to my email, I'll check to see if, because it might be possible that what updated didn't even include this district.
That is entirely possible, but we usually get the day after all at once. But I know yesterday some of the races came through really spotty for the first minute. Yesterday she was at 55.41.
It went from her having like 29,000 76 votes to like 30,550. So it was a small update.
Yeah. Super small update, but a noticeable for her purposes. She just wants to get votes in and not see anything pulling down. Will this is a weird race, especially with like some of the racialized kind of messaging from Councilmember Kevin De Leon. He's probably telling some people that the late coming Latino vote is going to break hard from him. It's also going to be a significantly younger vote, and even though there's some young folks willing to throw their vote for Trump nationally, I don't know how much that's going to trickle down ballot. We haven't seen that, trickle down in the same way in down ballot races elsewhere. It's such a small update that like we got to see more, but I think she should feel pretty damn good about where she is. She's up 10. Kevin De Leon would really need to be up 10 himself to feel comfortable right now because as we saw in the primary, the late breaking votes are going to go should go pretty solidly for her. Thoughts, questions about CD14? The other race we've got for city council is Heather Hutt, up right now 61.95. She was at 61.68 this morning. She is just gonna keep on steamrolling from here. She is solidly to the left of her opponent, Grace Yu, and really performed well in the late ballots in the primary, and I would expect that to continue here, and she's gonna have a big ol' win there. District 2. This is where we've got Nazarian, Councilmember Krikorian's former chief of staff. In the chat, see, is this the last time you runs in CD10 or not? I would hope so, think so. You can't write anything off. Especially I would love to think that maybe we have an expanded city council one day, and maybe she will run in a new different district. But I think three L's is probably enough, especially when at this point Heather Hutt will be the she came in as the incumbent, but always had the kind of timidity of being somebody that was elected, and that plays in the minds outside and inside. I think there was an acknowledgement and an understanding from her own office and her herself that she needs to win to have the full clout that an LA City Council member has amongst their colleagues at City Hall. So Council District 2, this is one where a lot of money, $1 million spent for from outside money for Adrien Nazarian. He had his own war chest himself, running against a progressive challenger, Jillian Burgos. He is up by more than 10% right now. We have seen some really wild, dramatic swings in elections, so I would not write anything off right now, but it's gonna require some gains on ground. He picked up a slightly higher share, but it's super marginal in this last update. We don't really have big numbers here, so there's just a lot more to be seen, but wanted to just stop here and see if anybody has other thoughts on this race.
I mean, I think the thing that's going to be remarkable in this one is probably going to be the votes per dollar spent. Just the fact that she is where she's at when having so much less money, even with matching funds, when you compare all the IE money and everything else, she's really remarkably outperforming what you would expect for how much money she had to spend.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, it's she's significantly outspent and taking on an establishment former elected official. And I don't think Mr. Nazarian can feel too elated about where he is right now. He will take a win either way, but so just gonna try to find some of the state legislature races. If there's anything anybody would like to flag or check out, just browsing through the current results right now. I know there was a healthy amount of money spent against the progressive council member in Burbank, Constantine Anthony, out up on top solidly right now. Good to see. We have some members leaving us. One of those being Reggie Jones Sawyer, who was easily the worst performing candidate in Council District 10. Sade is up solidly. That is done. A lot of money was thrown behind Jessica Colosa to fill Wendy Carrillo's seat. She is up healthily and big, very, very big. District 54 is a lot more interesting. We have Miguel Santiago as district director, Mark Gonzalez, former head of LA County Democratic Party, sitting in kind of the same territory that, you know, Nazarian is in, where and Jimmy Gomez, where they're definitely grateful to be up by more than double digits, but can't really feel confident about anything at this point. This one might get interesting, but that is still a decent gap to close. Pilar Schiavo in District 40 was a target for Republicans. She is in a good place right now. This is one where, you know, when she won it previously, had to claw her way up in you know, a number of updates to get into winning territory. And the fact that, you know, she is where she is right now, it's probably not going to get any better for Patrick Lee Gibson. This is a district, District 25. This is one of those where it is mostly LA County, but it has some of San Bernardino County. So this does not include everybody, and those San Bernardino voters are a bit more conservative. But we do have the Alhambra City Council member Sasha Renee Perez up very big there. This is one of those where she faced a very wealthy, self-funded Democrat in the primary, and that was the brutal fight. Another one, I'm not 100% sure. Does anybody know off the top of their head if District 23 is all in LA County? A lot of money was spent by the Dems to get Kip Muller through. He is down by about 6% right now. Totally doable to close, but that is one of those weirder districts and could end up falling short. We
He's
can go
not.
back to LA.
That
What's
does that district is not fully in LA County.
Gotcha. So we are over at the Secretary of State's website right now. And you've got quick links to hop to different races. I think the interesting ones were the state measures. And for this state stuff, it can be a bit of a roller coaster because like we're getting results from different counties and they can be added in weird batches. So it's not as kind of predictable of a cadence as we get with the county. But still not great for Prop 6. I'm curious what's the LA County Prop 6? At least in the latest numbers, because I think it was up by like 4% in LA County as of this morning. Yeah. Not much of a change there at a county level in that race. So, Jamie.
One thing did want to say is with the LAUSD races, all the school board backed candidates are in the lead.
Thank you.
So that's another one that I think's of interest. It seems like Scott Schmerelson's doing the worst, but he's in the valley, but I expect that his lead will expand. And then you have I think it's Carla Griego. Her opponent had been sort of ensnared in some allegations around a number of things. So there's also that, but just really interesting because I got so much mail for Scott Schmerelson's opponent, so there was definitely a lot of spending there.
Yeah. Schmerelson is up by about 4% right now. District 1, that was one where we had a candidate with some little mini scandals that sandbagged them, but they were able to squeak through to the runoff. So that one is a no surprise to see a blowout there. Kind of surprising to see Carla come up so big. But Schmerelson, the incumbent, is not in a necessarily great place, but he should probably be okay, at least from current sitting position right now. Any other races to take a peek at? I think there's some congressional races that might be. This race up in, I believe, Northern California, or at least Central Valley area-ish. That one is closely contested, could easily flip around. Um, Sorry, I can't just quick search. District 30. Yeah, Laura Friedman up huge in District 30. That one was one where we had a huge number of Dems running in that jungle primary, and a Republican slipped through and pretty much ended in the primary. Will Rollins is one where Dems have put a lot of money into that. I think that's the district that goes out towards like the Coachella Valley. Really a small margin right now, like less than 2,000 or a little over 2,000 votes. So this is one to keep a very close eye on. Derek Tran and Michelle Steele. That's another one that's got a lot of eyes on it. Totally doable to flip, but we really don't know exactly how some of these are going to pan out. We've got some interesting dynamics with Latino preferences at the moment. David Min, this is the Katie Porter seat that she left. He's the Dem, had a DUI before the primary that's kind of hanging over their head, but people think might be able to pull it off. And that's it. Other races to take a peek at, or we can call it a day. Kind of an underwhelming update from the LA County Registrar.
I was just going to add for people who are looking at statewide ballot measures, I looked up the number of votes in 2020, which may not be the same this year, but just for context, it was just under 18 million votes. So when you're looking at the results, kind of get an idea of how many are left.
Yeah, this is such a small update. I'm just looking at where it was at before, and we got around 80,000 new votes for LA County. Really, really small update. One interesting thing to just throw out there is you may recall that our Attorney General is posing some concerns, legally speaking, about our current city council district maps for the city of Los Angeles. And worth noting that like we haven't seen that report or heard the intimate details, but presumably some of that was based upon the current lay of the land at the time. And we now have a charter amendment that has passed that says this is how redistricting is supposed to be done. I have to take a really close look at like the text just to see if there's anything that might be, particularly helpful or not helpful for the argument. But some have thrown out the idea that, that might change the calculation of both parties, and there might be a different lay of the land as far as the requirement that the lines be independently drawn. Some of the initial proposals have thrown out the idea that maybe there is an advisory commission, or maybe the council has limited discretion and posing an objection to the maps for purely VRA, Voting Rights Act reasons. We really don't know, but there were some breadcrumbs in the LA Times this weekend as far as mentioning that the council might be taking that issue up after the election. So that's just something to keep an eye out on in the next few weeks as the city council might very well be considering that issue. Unfortunately, a lot of that debate's going to be happening behind closed doors in closed session. But there is potentially some reason for that conversation to happen sooner rather than later, because regardless of how we plan on drawing the lines, whether it be an independent commission or an advisory one, that requires time. And 2026 elections are coming up very fast. The fundraising period for that will be opening in about a month, maybe 5 weeks. And a year from then, candidates will have to be filing to run for those offices. So they got to know where those districts are with some decent notice, I believe 30 days before the filing period. So if we were to redraw the lines, it would require relatively quick action from the council. Jamie, I think that's an old hand, but I wanted to, unless there were any other thoughts or questions on election shit, we can shift over to talking about Kevin De Leon. You've got a bit more familiarity with some of the stuff there. Wanted to just throw it over to you and see if you wanted to give it a quick run through. We're not going to give like an exhaustive explanation of like every nook and cranny of the Kevin De Leon corruption issues. That might take a better, longer, proper presentation, but some of the quick hits to just give some background and context. And more than anything, some context on what people on their own can kind of look for to identify the problematic scenarios that he ended up in.
So, hi. I started scrutinizing Kevin De Leon's contributions, partly because I got in a fight with Mike Trujillo on Twitter. So shout out to Mike Trujillo. But I just wanted to talk about some of the common issues that you could see with contributions, and also the fact that we have a new state law that has entered the lexicon as of 2023, that aimed to end pay-to-play practices. And with this state law, what it essentially says is that if you have an entitlement that is seen before the city council, you can't donate more than $250 in the 12 months after your entitlement is heard. So that's also a new one that we have. But it also says that in the 12 months prior to your entitlement, if the council person wants to vote on it and you've given them more than $250, they need to give back the money to at least get down to the 250 level. So that's the part of what we're working with. But with Kevin, one of the things that we saw or that I believe I've seen allegedly, just to cover my butt, are things like over the limit donation. So that is when somebody contributes more than the maximum allowed. In this election, that's $900 per election period. So 900 primary, 900 general. Some of the ways that you could see that are just things like somebody contributing too much and the contribution never being returned. You also could have something like aggregation, which is where somebody has their company give, and then they also give personally. A really good example of this would be something like this company called Fabric Merchants, and then the CEO, Steve Wisner, very clearly states on his website that he's the owner, that he's in control. You had max donations from both on the same day. So that'd be a really good example. But more interestingly, I think, are looking at some of the decisions that happened in his district, and how those donations flowed. The city recently entered into a $55 million contract to develop land for LA Services, for LA Sand to set up shop. Some of this is going to be stuff that's used in homelessness sweep. Some of it is going to be stuff that is used in combating illegal dumping. Some of it is going to be stuff for mobile hygiene. It's going to have a wide variety of uses. And the day after the first vote that happened on this contract, Kevin got a $900 contribution. So not only is that, not kosher with the state law, but that's also something that's not kosher with city law, because the city says if a contract has a value of over $100,000, you can't get a donation at all for a year after it's finalized or while it's pending, which is essentially what this was. Kevin then in the general got a second donation from this company while it was pending, and then there was a second vote, and then it went through. So in my mind, both of those contributions are not kosher, both at the city and state level. You also saw things like an alcohol license was approved in his district. It was for the Rome nightclub, which is at the LA Grand Hotel, which of course an interesting connection there is that the LA Grand is owned by the Chinese billionaire who bribed Jose Huizar. So always fun to see how these things are connected. But about 7 or 8 months later, he got a max donation from the man who applied for the alcohol license. While the city law could be okay with that, the state law is not. The max that he could get is $250. So those are some of the examples of the kinds of things that we saw. There was also a lot of stuff with this. All of the council members have what are called discretionary funds. They come from different accounts and they all have different balances, but they can be used in a wide variety of ways. If you're John Lee, you might be spending them entirely on cops, typically, but you might be entering into contracts with various orgs. In one case, Kevin was doing these food boxes, but you also see contributions from employees of the food boxes shortly after this multi-$100,000 contract, which was then extended and became like a $1.1 million contract. And minimally, the signer on the contract is somebody who gave. And then under the state law, there's also concerns about that as well. That particular one is what the FPPC opened an investigation into suspected laundered campaign donations. So we really have a really just running the gamut of possibly problematic contributions with Kevin. But then there's also what Rob is going to talk about next, which is conflict of interest.
So in addition to a potential conflict of interest arising from, a contribution that might require a council member to recuse from an item, that they have to be conscientious of what sources of income they have. So we've seen instances where, current price failed, but now is better at recusing on items related to the company his wife works for. Now, spoiler alert, the company his wife works for is the company his wife owns. But those are really kind of like straightforward instances. One thing to be particularly mindful of is the previous employers for our elected officials. And state and local city law are slightly different, but at least for our city purposes, it's a bit more clear. And the law says that if that is related to a source of income, a previous employer of that elected official from the year prior to them assuming office, and a vote or participation in a matter would have a material effect on them, the elected official has to recuse from the item. And after Councilmember De Leon was elected, he had a 8-month break before assuming office. And he was able to pick up some new clients, and there were just a number of instances where he voted on items related to his previous clients in his first year in office, and in some instances didn't merely vote on them, but actively participated in them, and made motions and presided over meetings and engaged in heavy discussion on them, and was the leading elected official on the matter. So those are all bad. What you want to look for is in particular, all of our candidates have to file a statement of economic interest, aka a Form 700, when they file to run for office, but they have to also file one when they assume office. And that is the particularly important one. And I'll just give you an example. Councilmember Tim McCosker had a number of clients prior to taking office, but it just timing wise, it's pretty clear. Like, he's a super savvy insider. He had no sources of income from them in the year prior to assuming office, which indicates like he terminated services intentionally before the filing period. Adrien Nazarian could have made a lot of money in the last year or so by working elsewhere, but he appears to have, just been chilling on his pension and other income sources that he's got, and that frees them from having to recuse on certain items. So this is something that if you've got your eye on a certain elected official, you want to be looking at that assuming office Form 700, and it only applies for the first year. So I'll give you another example. Tracy Park previously worked for a law firm that does a lot of city business, providing outside counsel for the city attorney's office. And for her first year, she had to recuse from them. There was an instance where she almost failed to. I flagged it during public comment, and she recused herself. But once that 1 year period was up, she was free to vote on their items. So it applies to a very specific window. What's unique about the complaint that was filed last week on this is we've asked the LA City Ethics Commission to commence action on the matter. And this is basically a private right of action. And this was something that the Cowan Commission, we've talked about this earlier this year, the commission that came up with our ethics commission and everything policy-wise that was packed into that measure 35 years ago. They felt it was really, really important that there be some sort of private right of action in case the commission didn't have, the courage or ability to go after enforcement matters. So this gives the public an ability to force them to follow a case. How it works is the ethics commission will have 40 days to respond. And if they say we're going to take enforcement action, that's the end of the matter from the private right of action end. Unless they end up losing the enforcement case. That's, who knows. But the situation is the ethics commission this is a way to nudge the ethics commission to potentially take enforcement action. And if they're unwilling to, then you have the ability to sue. There is some mild incentive, or at least reason to go through all of that trouble. If you are victorious in that eventual claim, you can collect half of the fines. So in this case, if Kevin De Leon, if the most egregious matters were taken up by the ethics commission and you were fined them, could potentially be looking at $90,000 in fines. Half of that could go towards the plaintiff, the person suing, and you can also collect reasonable attorney's fees. So this is something that has not been used frequently. The last time it was attempted was about 10 years ago. An opponent of then city attorney candidate Mike Fuhrer tried to utilize this, and they didn't necessarily have a great case, and they didn't win. But it's something that's very sparingly used, but might be necessary to get our council members to take this issue seriously and to get the ethics commission moving and a bit more vigilant on things. So with that, wanted to just pause and see if there were any thoughts, questions on that, or anything in general. We are pretty much at the end of things here. And apologies, we had a slightly underwhelming update today from the registrar. But the calendar is let me drop that in the chat just so you have it. And we will see what comes. not seeing or hearing any questions, I don't really have a ton of inspirational or comforting things to say about the current lay of the land politically. It's not good. But just that whatever's gonna happen, Los Angeles is home. There's a reason we've chosen to be here. And it's not going to be a concise linear free fall. We will always have an ability to some extent to try to shape the way shit goes down. So here is to 4 more years of whatever all that was. Any last thoughts, Jamie, Chris?
I'm just taking small comfort in Kevin having to deal with multiple ethics complaints as he leaves office. Like that's gonna be the thing he now has to deal with. So it's fun.
Yeah. Not having Kevin De Leon there is something. And yeah. Anyways, thank you all for joining, and we will be reconvening the second Wednesday of the month in December 11th, that night sometime. Don't have anything on the calendar at the moment as far as a time, but that will be next time around. Bart.
When is the last day of, well, the day we get to say goodbye to Kevin? It's December 5th, December 8th. It's something like that.
So the new city council members get sworn in, I believe, off the top of my head, it is the second Tuesday of December.
That is correct. I just was looking for the date, but I can look that up.
Yeah, so the new council would be getting sworn in on the 10th potentially, and Kevin's last day will be on December 6th. So I encourage everybody to turn out for that one because it will be fun. And unfortunately, a lot of our council members are really fond of him. So Gil Cedillo and Neri Martinez, when they got, booted off the council, Jose Huizar, they didn't get the grand farewells where our council members tell their stories about everything they loved and have their family come in and give long speeches. Unfortunately, we're gonna have that on December 6th for Kevin De Leon's last meeting, and I don't know about you, but I don't want to see that.
Can we give him a big mural of the 3 graffiti high rises in downtown as his parting gift? A big mural, a 20 by 40 canvas of it. That would be a nice parting gift for Kevin.
It would.
He'd still be under gift restrictions at that point. So you just want to be careful of the value, not that he really pays attention to those rules either.
Yeah. We gotta schmooze with the city hall security because they sometimes can be picky about what they let go inside. But yeah, we got to come up with something creative to bid him farewell. I like the idea. Unless there's anything else, enjoy the rest of your day and try to distract yourself from all of the doom and gloom and find some silver linings in life, even though it's already fucking dark. Have a nice meal, drink some wine.